Malik Hargrove thought he'd found an abandoned mine, but what he uncovered was something no map dared to mark. Deep beneath Pennsylvania's forest floor, he found a stone doorway, standing alone, humming like it was alive. When he shined his light through it, something on the other side looked back. The whispers started then, calling his name, pulling him deeper until the tunnel itself began to shift, twisting like it was breathing. His camera caught only fragments, shadows moving along the walls, his panicked breath, and a voice that wasn't his whispering, "You do now." The next day, rescuers found no trace of Malik, only a polished brass tag swinging on the sealed gate. The name etched into it was his. Before we go any further, if this is your first time here, we'd love for you to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Your support means the world and helps us bring you even more powerful stories. Stick with us until the end, and if this mystery moves you, share your thoughts in the comments and pass it along to a friend. They found the gate at dusk, half buried in moss, a black maw of rusted iron threaded with old rope and forgotten locks, while the sky still argued with the hills. Malik Hargrove remembers the exact taste of the air then. Metallic, damp, a sour of coal dust that no breeze could fully chase. He remembers how his fingers slid over the cold iron and how his lungs tightened as if the woods itself had inhaled, waiting. Start there. That image, Malik standing over the threshold, headlamp trembling in his palm, was the moment the whole thing stopped being a story and began to unspool. But we're getting ahead. Let me back up a little because the slow burn matters. You have to feel the build, the small, ordinary things that lurch into menace. 2 weeks earlier, Malik was a contractor. Drywall, roofs, the kind of work that leaves your hands calloused and your sleep shallow. He'd come north because a cousin owed him a favor, and because there's money to be made taking old properties and trying to make them livable again. Pennsylvania was a page of blue hills and leftover towns, and the place he'd been hired to clear, an abandoned miner's cabin tucked off a gravel forestry road, felt at first like the sort of quiet that patches your nerves. He'd heard the stories. Everyone had stories. Miner's Gate was a name locals said with the kind of shrug that hides two truths. One, that people who live near old mines learn to keep their distance. Two, that stories sell. Over beers at a diner, a woman behind the counter, her name was Ruth, silver braid, sharp eyes, told Malik, "You see that road to the left? Don't go past the creek. Folks say the gate. It's not for tourists." She said it like she was warning him about potholes. But even then there was gossip, low and intimate. Heard some fellas heard things, rattling like tools. My sister drove past once, lights gone out. People exchange these lines the way they exchange recipes, half warning, half habit. Malik laughed then, because who doesn't? But laughter shrinks when you're carrying a generator and a coil of wire at 2 a.m. When the trees throw their own kind of darkness and your flashlight makes small islands of safety that aren't enough. He slept badly for 3 nights. He kept waking to the impression of footsteps just outside the trailer like someone pacing a circle around him. But when he opened the door, there was only a raw smell of pine and the distant buzz of insects. He told himself it was the land being ancient, doing the things old land does, settling, sighing, shifting. On the morning he first saw the gate, he was with 2 others from the job, June, a compact woman who smoked too much and told jokes to cut the silence, and Eli, a lanky kid who kept snapping photos of nothing. They argued about the right way to brace a sagging porch, about whether to pry a shutter or pull it free. Small human arguments, pull, wedge, curse, laugh, until June paused, cocked her head and said, "Wait, did you hear that?" They all heard it then. A metallic click, like a lock settling, far down a slope. The 3 of them froze, the kind of freeze that is a bodily pact. Don't show fear, don't be the first to run. Curiosity does the rest. You know this. Curiosity built of boredom, and the itch to be the one who discovers something, the way men lean toward a campfire story. They followed the sound deeper into the forest. The light changed, filtered, green, claustrophobic, and the path narrowed until their boots were swallowed by leaf litter and the silence thickened into a presence. Small things announced the way, a rope half buried, a boot print too large for any of theirs, a carved notch in a tree with something like an old miner's mark. When Malik first saw the gate, he was not dramatic. He lowered his headlamp and let the beam cut a ritual line across the iron. The gate was older than any of them had expected, wrought iron, bolted to stone posts that had been dressed by hand. The locks had been pried, the hinges caked with red-brown. Behind it, the ground dropped away into a dark mouth, an entrance that disappeared into a hollow where the light went thin and the smell shifted from wet earth to something older, like the inside of a closed room where people once lived and never left. He crouched and put his palm on the stone. It was warm, oddly warm, though the air itself was cool. His fingers came away flecked with a strange, powdery residue that smelled faintly of metal and something sweet. He said nothing, because the first language of fear is silence. June whispered, "We should mark this. Call someone." Eli kept clicking his camera. The small human noises were absurd in that place, like clapping at a cathedral door. And then the sound, soft, like a hammer on wet wood, came from below. Not echo, not wind, a rhythm, a pattern. Malik felt the hair at his neck stand up the way it does when a memory surfaces uninvited. He pressed his ear to the gate, and he could hear, very faintly, someone singing a number. Not a song we knew, it was old, syllables cutting through the cold. The three of them looked at each other with the kind of acknowledgement that closes jokes and opens something sharper. They were now part of the same small event, bound by an accidental trespass. They made a plan that felt adult. Don't go alone. Take the rope, lower a camera, test the shaft. Liam, no, Eli, threaded the rope and tied a knot with a surgeon's weave they'd learned on job sites. He joked to disperse the tension. "If I fall, make sure I land on the pretty rocks." The laugh cracked, brittle. They lowered the camera. The feed came back grainy. A tubular passage, wooden supports, a ladder that fell away into shadow. Then the screen went black. The monitor hummed, and the hush returned. That night, in the trailer, the gossip flowed again. This time sharper, edged with the thrill of being the ones who had peered into the mouth of something. Ruth, the diner woman, leaned in and told a different detail. Old town maps call that place Miner's Gate, because of a shaft they opened in 1893. Folks disappeared. They closed it up. They said the ground swallowed more than tools, she added, under her breath. That her brother-in-law swore the miners were still heard hauling ore sometimes, long after the mine was shut. She shrugged, as if shrugging could exhale the story away. Malik lay awake and thought of the residue on his palm, the warmth, the song. He tried to name the feeling, curiosity, dread, a kind of small, hungry wonder, and failed to settle on one. He knew something else, too. That once a place like that registers on you, it does not forget. It becomes a bruise on the mind. And bruises, you know, have a way of aching until you touch them again. So he went back. Not with bravado, more like tugged by an obligation. It is human, this pull, the sense that you saw a corner of the world and left it unresolved. He packed extra rope, the generator, a coil of cable, and he left a note on the trailer table that simply read, "Back in an hour." It was an ordinary lie meant to comfort anyone who might worry. Because who tells the truth when the truth is you're drawn by an iron gate and a song that might be real? He stood again at the threshold, headlamp low, breath visible in the thinning light. He thought of June's hand on his sleeve earlier, of Eli's camera flash like a small heart. He thought of Ruth's half-smile and the way the town's gossip had softened the edge of fear into curiosity. He pushed the gate open. The hinges protested, a long, low creak that sounded like something waking up. The gap opened, and the dark answered with an appetite. He took a single step forward, and the wood seemed to exhale around him, like a held breath returning to its owner. That single step was the end of ordinary life and the beginning of the thing that would not let go. The air shifted the second Malik crossed the gate. It wasn't colder. That's the strange part. It was thicker, like stepping into a pocket of time that still breathed someone else's breath. He crouched, adjusting the straps of his headlamp, and let the beam drift across the tunnel walls. They glistened faintly, damp but speckled with flecks of silver gray that caught the light like dust made of mirrors. The passage dipped at a gentle angle, carved wide enough for two men to walk shoulder to shoulder, but the supports were warped, bowed inward, and you could hear them creak quietly every time he exhaled. His boots crushed something brittle. He lowered the light. Old bones of a rat, gnawed clean. A newspaper fragment fused with mud, the ink too faded to read. Every step felt deliberate, measured. He wasn't sure whether he was walking into something or being walked toward. The difference felt small down here. Up above, June and Eli waited. They hadn't agreed on it. Malik had just moved before anyone could argue. But now the silence between them felt like a contract they hadn't signed. June leaned on a shovel, cigarette trembling. "He's been down there too long," she muttered. Eli didn't look up from the screen where the feed from the headlamp camera flickered. Static licked the edges. "He's fine," he said. "He's just checking the incline." June replied, half unconvinced. "You ever notice how the quiet here doesn't sound right? Like it's listening?" Eli forced a laugh that didn't carry far. "That's just the hills, June. The air echoes weird." But even as he said it, a faint sound crawled out of the speaker, metallic, distant, rhythmic. Clink, clink, clink. Eli frowned. "He's probably tapping his pick." June shook her head slowly. "He didn't take a pick." Malik paused halfway down, touched his ear. The sound was real down here too. The faint hammering he'd heard yesterday, clearer now, steady and hollow, like metal striking stone underwater. "June?" he called into the mic. Static answered, low and hungry. He took a breath, tried again. "Eli, do you copy?" Nothing. Just the hum of the line, like a throat trying to form words. He exhaled through his teeth, whispering, "Guess it's just me." That's when the smell changed. The air had been stale, yes, the kind of stale that comes from sealed rooms and years of stillness. But now there was something else beneath it. Something faintly sweet, like old oil or dried flowers. He passed a rotted crate, its wood gone gray and splintered, marked with stenciled letters. Dunmore, Mining Co. Inside, gloves, a rusted lantern, a small tin badge. He brushed it off, revealing the engraved initials, RMH, the same as his own. Malik froze, staring at the letters. A coincidence, sure, but coincidences feel heavier underground. He slipped the badge into his pocket and kept going, the tunnel narrowing until his shoulders grazed the walls. His headlamp flickered. Just once. Then again. He tapped the casing, muttering, "Come on, don't start." The light steadied. Then came the voice. Not words at first, but a low hum. It seemed to rise from the walls themselves, almost soothing, almost human. It wrapped around his breathing, matched his rhythm. He whispered without thinking. "Hello." The hum stopped, and the silence afterward felt alive. "Up top," Eli cursed under his breath. "Feed's glitching." June leaned closer. The screen had gone gray, streaked with static. For a moment, the outline of Malik's face appeared. Distorted, headlamp flaring like an eye. Then blackness. Eli tapped the monitor, frowning. "It's gone." June blew smoke through her nose. "You gonna go after him?" He hesitated. "Hell no." She stared down the slope, jaw tight. "Then we wait." Two hikers passing on the forestry road saw them and slowed. "You folks working the mine trail?" one asked. June forced a smile. "Something like that." The older hiker glanced toward the tree line, uneasy. "You don't want to stay down here after dark. That's where they buried the entrance, ain't it?" June tilted her head. "Who?" The man gestured vaguely. "The company. After the collapse in '93, said the miners broke through to another shaft that wasn't on any map." His wife added softly, "They say you can still hear him if the wind's right." The pair walked on, leaving June staring at the trees, her cigarette trembling ash to the ground. Inside the shaft, Malik found a wooden ladder descending deeper. Each rung groaned beneath his boots. He counted under his breath. 1, 2, 3, like it might keep the nerves steady. The walls were streaked with black, but in places the rock shimmered faintly blue, as if veins of quartz had been burned into glass. At the bottom, the passage widened into a chamber supported by beams wrapped in rope. The ropes were new, clean, tight, and dry. He crouched beside one, rubbed his thumb over the fibers. Fresh rope, not from the 1800s. Someone had been here recently. He swung the light around. There were footprints, boot prints, layered, some half-smeared. A lantern still hanging from a hook, the wick trimmed. Malik's breath stuttered. Someone's working this place. He stepped forward, the ground crunching underfoot. And that's when he saw it. A wall carved smooth, symbols etched across it in careful arcs. Not English, not Latin. A looping pattern of runes that shimmered faintly when the beam hit them. He blinked, took a step closer. The shimmer wasn't reflection, it was movement. The lines pulsed, breathing in the dark. He reached out. The stone was warm, almost fevered. The humming started again, faint and coaxing. And for one dizzy second, he thought he heard whispers, not words, but the shape of them, like miners counting strokes on a pick. He jerked his hand back. The humming stopped. "June," he whispered. "Eli, can you hear me?" Still nothing. He turned, scanning the chamber again, heart hammering. There, half buried under debris, a set of tools, neatly arranged, a shovel, pickaxe, a tin of oil. And beside them a small metal sign. It read, "Authorized Access, Project Gate, Reopened, 2017. He stared. "Reopened?" he murmured. Then realization hit him. This wasn't an abandoned mine. Someone had come back. He followed the direction the fresh ropes led, through a narrow crevice into another chamber, this one lower, colder. The light caught on something hanging from the ceiling. Dozens of tags, metal nameplates, swinging faintly. Each one bore initials, miners' names, some corroded, some polished clean. And among them, one glinted bright and new. M. Hargrove. His own name again. He froze. The tag swayed once, twice. Then something deep in the dark exhaled. The tunnel floor trembled, faintly at first, then with the rhythm of steps. Slow, deliberate, getting closer. Malik backed up, hitting the wall. His flashlight caught motion. The glint of a helmet? No, not quite. It was the faint outline of a figure, walking with a limp, the sound of dragging metal behind it. He whispered, voice shaking, "Who's there?" The shape paused, head tilting. And then, nothing. Gone. Only the echo remained, fading, as though swallowed. He swallowed hard, tried to calm the trembling in his fingers. "It's okay," he muttered to himself. "It's just the mind playing tricks. Echoes. Old air." But the gate behind him had closed. He didn't remember hearing it move. But when he turned, it was sealed tight. Up above, June flicked her lighter nervously. Eli muttered, "That was over an hour." "Maybe 2, she said. "He's not coming back." They packed their gear in silence, pretending they wouldn't drive off without him. But when the first drop of rain hit the windshield, Eli turned the key. The headlights caught the gate at the slope, wide open again. They didn't see Malik standing just beyond it, unmoving, eyes wide as if listening to something the world couldn't hear. His headlamp blinked once, then went dark. When Malik woke, the light on his helmet had died. For a long moment, he didn't move. His heartbeat was the only thing with rhythm left. Slow, heavy, out of sync with the quiet that surrounded him. He didn't remember falling asleep or falling at all. Only that 1 second the air had trembled. And the next, darkness had weight. He patted the ground around him. Dirt, stone, cold. His flashlight had cracked but still worked if he held it half-pressed. A cone of weak light cut through the murk, revealing the narrow chamber he had stumbled into. Smaller than before, the ceiling bowed low enough to scrape his shoulder when he stood. He coughed, the sound bouncing back too fast. The air down here felt wrong, still, but not empty, like being inside a throat that had just swallowed something. He turned, searching for the ladder he'd climbed down earlier. Gone. The opening he'd entered through was sealed shut, smooth stone where there should have been a crawl space. He whispered, "What the hell?" And the echo came back distorted, delayed, as if something was whispering it back through layers of rock. He reached for the wall, ran his fingers over it. It pulsed faintly, the same way a vein does when you press it too long. He pulled his hand away and muttered, "No, no, that's just the blood in your fingers, that's all." Above ground, dawn crawled gray over the hills. June and Eli returned before sunrise, guilt gnawing at them harder than sleep. They parked near the slope again. The forest smelled different now, sour and metallic. June hesitated before stepping out, the air thick like it was holding its breath. "Don't say it," Eli muttered, grabbing the rope coil. "I wasn't gonna," she said, but her eyes were already scanning the tree line. "You ever notice how quiet it gets before a storm? Only there's no storm coming." Eli nodded stiffly. "We'll just check the entrance, see if he left gear, that's all." They reached the clearing. The gate stood wide open. The chains lay in the dirt, twisted and blackened at the edges, as if they'd been burned. June crouched, brushed one with her boot. "What did this?" Eli didn't answer. He aimed the flashlight into the shaft. The beam went only so far before it bent, swallowed by darkness. The smell hit them then. Deep, earthy, with something like oil and wet stone. "Malik," June called. Her voice fell flat, absorbed. Eli muttered, "Maybe he made it through the other side. There's a back exit sometimes, old tunnels loop." June didn't buy it, but she let him say it. Because people lie to survive worry. Behind them, someone cleared their throat. They spun. Ruth, the diner woman, stood at the tree line, her coat drawn tight. "You went down there?" she asked softly. Eli frowned. "How did you?" She nodded toward the truck. "You parked at the same spot the survey team used. I told them not to." "What survey team?" June asked. "Mining company, year or two ago. Said they were testing ground stability. But I saw their trucks hauling out crates, not soil. Haven't seen them since." Ruth's voice lowered. "That place, people think it's haunted. It's not. It's something older than haunted." June swallowed. "You sound like you've been there." Ruth looked at the entrance and shook her head slowly. "No, my father did. He came back wrong." Back underground, Malik followed the faint hum again. Not from the walls this time, but from somewhere deeper, a low vibration like machinery far away. The tunnel bent left, then split. He hesitated. Both ways looked identical. He flipped a coin in his mind. Right felt heavier, somehow truer. The path opened into a small chamber where the rock walls had been carved with shallow marks. Pick strikes, old, overlapping. He brushed dust away and saw letters beneath them, carved by hand. "Help us. RMH. 1893. He froze. RMH. The same initials from the badge in his pocket. He pulled it out, turned it in his hand. The metal was warm again, pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. He whispered, "What are you trying to tell me?" Then the humming deepened. A metallic echo rolled through the passage like distant thunder, a slow, dragging rhythm that shook dust from the ceiling. He ducked, shielding his face, and when the rumbling stopped, he noticed something new. A light, faint and orange, glowing through a crack in the wall. He pressed his fingers to it. Warm air flowed through, human warmth, the scent of smoke. He pushed at the crack until the rock gave way, revealing a narrow slit into another chamber. And there, through the opening, he saw figures. Not clear, not ghostly, but silhouettes made of dull orange light, moving in a rhythm, swinging tools in slow arcs. Miners. Their bodies shone like coal embers, fading and reappearing, each movement accompanied by a metallic ring. He whispered, "You're not real." But they moved in perfect rhythm, every breath, every strike, like they'd never stopped. He stepped closer, pressing his forehead against the stone. The nearest figure turned. Its face wasn't human, not anymore. but something hollowed out, its mouth moving without sound. And Malik felt the vibration crawl through his teeth, words forming inside his head. "Keep digging." He jerked back, gasping. The crack sealed itself, the rocks sliding shut like a jaw closing. Above, June sat on the tailgate, eyes on the trees. "He's not coming out," she whispered. Eli didn't respond. He was staring at his phone. "You hearing this?" he asked. June listened. There was a faint vibration, a rhythmic pulse coming from under their boots, too steady to be wind. "That's coming from below," she said. Eli nodded. "Like someone's drilling." Ruth, still standing near the trees, murmured, "It always starts like that. The ground sings first." Malik's headlamp flickered again, then steadied, revealing a new path, one that hadn't been there before. The walls were lined with timbers freshly cut, the air too clean, almost manufactured. At the end of the corridor stood a steel door bolted shut with modern hinges. He reached it, shone his light on the plate beside it. "Project Gate, Operations Core." He blinked, whispering, 2017. They actually reopened it. He looked closer. Someone had scrawled words across the plate in red chalk. "Do not open. It remembers." His pulse quickened. He gripped the handle. For a long time, he didn't move. Then, quietly, Too late to turn back now." He pulled. The door screeched open an inch, enough for air to rush past him, warm, stale, and laced with something faintly human. He gagged, covering his nose. The chamber beyond was massive, half cavern, half structure, with steel beams welded into the natural rock. Cables hung from the ceiling, humming faintly. In the center of the floor, a machine sat surrounded by crates stamped with the same Dunmore Mining Commerce insignia. The machine itself was beautiful and terrible, an engine made of bronze gears, pipes, and what looked like veins of glowing ore. Each turn of the gear emitted a low moan, almost like breathing. Malik stepped closer, flashlight trembling. He touched the metal, and it moved. The surface rippled under his fingers like warm flesh. He stumbled back, whispering, "What the hell did they build down here?" On the far wall, more writing. "We found the gate. It opens both ways." The light dimmed. The air thickened. He turned toward the exit, but it was gone again. No door. No seam. Just stone. The humming grew louder, 1,000 voices whispering at once. He dropped to his knees, hands clamped over his ears, but the whispers weren't outside anymore. They were inside his head. "Dig. Stay. We're not done yet." Above ground, the vibration stopped suddenly. The forest went still. June stood, breath sharp. "It's gone," she whispered. Ruth frowned. "No, it's listening." Eli turned to the gate. From within the dark, a faint orange glow pulsed. Steady, rhythmic, like a heartbeat. The air inside the tunnel turned heavy, thick with something metallic, almost sweet, like rust mixed with rot. Malik's flashlight trembled as he scanned the passage, the beam flickering across uneven stone walls carved by tools too crude to be modern. The sound of dripping water echoed softly in the dark. But beneath it, there was something else. A whisper. At first, he thought it was his own breath bouncing back at him. But no, this was layered, overlapping, like several voices murmuring from behind the rock. "Malik, turn back." He froze. The light jittered as his fingers tightened around it. His heartbeat thudded in his ears, drowning out reason. He called out, "Who's there?" Silence. Then, just as he was about to move, a small tremor rattled the ground. Dust fell from the ceiling. The whispers swelled again, clearer this time, chant-like, repetitive, circling him. He took a shaky step forward, forcing his breath to steady. Every instinct screamed to leave, but curiosity. It chained him to the moment. Down the tunnel, he spotted a faint, flickering orange glow. It wasn't the beam of his flashlight. It was coming from deep ahead, pulsing like a heartbeat. Malik crept toward it, his boots crunching over gravel and old debris. He passed by a rotted wooden cart, its wheels long decayed. Miners' helmets were still lying there, their lamps shattered. Wires tangled like veins in the dirt. On one of the helmets, he noticed something strange, etched into the side in faded chalk. The gate answers only once. He frowned. The gate? Was this what those old men were whispering about back in town? As he continued, the tunnel widened into a circular chamber, massive, ancient. The walls were lined with black, glistening stone veins that shimmered faintly like oil under the flashlight. In the center stood what looked like a doorway made of the same strange rock, arched perfectly into the cavern floor. Except, it wasn't built into the wall. It was standing alone. A gate. The miner's gate. His chest tightened as he approached. The glow he'd seen was radiating from within the archway, pulsing, rhythmic, alive. Malik stood there, unable to tell if he was staring into light or into something moving behind it. The whispers were now louder, distinct, almost pleading. Go back. Close it. Before it opens again. He swallowed hard. What are you? He muttered, stepping closer. The ground vibrated beneath his feet. The light inside the archway brightened, twisting, forming ripples like water disturbed by wind. Malik instinctively reached for the camera slung around his shoulder and pressed record. He focused the lens on the gate. This is real, he whispered into the mic. There's something inside it. It's moving. Suddenly, the light inside the arch shifted. It looked back. He couldn't describe it. There was no face, no shape, just a feeling of being seen, like the space between his thoughts had been touched. His stomach lurched, and the whispering rose into a chorus, hundreds of voices screaming his name. Malik! He stumbled backward, his flashlight clattering to the floor, beams spinning wildly around the chamber. For a brief second, he saw shapes crawling along the walls, like shadows escaping the light. They moved unnaturally, bending and stretching, climbing toward the ceiling where the stone seemed to breathe. The glow dimmed suddenly, leaving the room in a suffocating silence. Only the faint static from his camera filled the air. Then, soft footsteps echoed from the tunnel behind him. He turned sharply, raising the camera light. Nothing. But when he turned back to the gate, the glow had vanished completely. Only darkness remained. Malik exhaled, trembling. He knelt, reaching for his flashlight, but froze when he noticed the floor. Fresh footprints. Not his. They led straight out of the chamber. He followed them cautiously, each step echoing like a question. The tunnel ahead twisted back toward the main shaft, but something felt wrong. The air, the texture of the stone, even the light from his flashlight looked slightly dimmer, like it struggled to reach the edges. He walked faster, whispering under his breath, "Just get out, man. You got the footage. You got proof." But as he moved deeper, the tunnel began to change shape. The walls closing in, bending unnaturally, no longer familiar. He looked behind him. The chamber was gone. The gate? Gone. Only the dark remained, swallowing every echo of his breath. When Malik finally moved, it was like surfacing through syrup. The dark around him had weight. Every breath pulled at his ribs. He felt stupid for the way his legs trembled. Small, human embarrassment. And he adjusted his jacket, thumb worrying the frayed cuff until the motion steadied him. Keep it together, he told himself. One foot, then the next. He found a wall and followed it by touch, fingers tracing grooves that told a story of hands long gone. Each groove felt like a fingerprint left by someone whose name had been scrubbed from memory. The light on his camera was nearly dead, a tiny tired star. He cupped it in his palm as if it were warm, and it was warm and pulsing, faintly, like a heart. He kept whispering into the small recorder, not because anyone would listen, at least not yet, but because words make things real. If anyone finds this, if anyone... His voice frayed, and he cut it, shook his head. The tunnel bent, then opened slightly into a low cavern where the air smelled of hot metal and something sweet, like overripe fruit. He gagged, wiped his mouth with the heel of his hand. There were noises. always noises, but in this place they layered into deliberate rhythms. The distant clink of metal on rock, a low dragging that crawled along the floor, a murmured counting under breath. Not sudden, not loud, like a machine slowly starting up, gear by gear. He could feel it more than hear it, a vibration through the soles of his boots, through his teeth. He found more tags, dozens of them, hanging from ribs bolted into the rock. Names, initials, dates. Some were from the 1890s, green with age. Others looked recently polished. He scanned until his heart stalled. Another M. Hargrove, but this one was new, brass bright, the edges still sharp. His fingers hovered over it like it might burn. He touched it. Cold, solid, real. A sound behind him made him spin. For a second he thought he saw movement in the periphery, a shoulder, a silhouette, and his throat closed up because hope flared that it was June or Eli coming back for him. Instead, there was only the echo of his own breath, folding back on itself. He tried the path back, following familiar rock formations, but the corridors kept shifting just enough to unnerve him. He'd note a knot of root, a chipped stone, and when he glanced back it would be different. It was as if the mind remembered the way he'd walked and then decided to rearrange the furniture. "That's not funny," he muttered, half laughing, half cursing. The kind of joke you make when you're scared and don't want to scream. Above, in town, things were changing in smaller, human ways. Eli couldn't sleep. He kept replaying Malik's last image on the camera, a shard of light against stone, as if replaying it could stitch the man back together. He showed it to June at dawn. She drew a shaky breath and said nothing. They drove to Ruth's diner, boots tracking gravel across the floor. The regulars leaned in when they walked in. Small conversations like whispers around a sleeping animal. "Did you hear?" one of them said. "Guy went down and never came up," another muttered. Ruth poured coffee with hands that didn't tremble but whose knuckles were white. "Your friend had Hargrove initials?" she asked, voice low. When they nodded, she folded her fingers around the mug, as if to warm herself. "My father told me about a man with those initials. Came back from the pits and wouldn't speak for weeks. Said he saw the faces in the walls." She paused, then added, "You should pray, he comes back the same." June's eyes glistened. She said nothing about prayers. Instead, she drove to the forestry office and knocked until someone in a high-vis vest answered, annoyed. "We need help," she said. "A man's lost on Miners Gate." The man on the porch frowned, squinting at the sky. "We closed that site," he said. "Company sealed it after the incident, but I'll call the sheriff." He fumbled with his radio, fingers clumsy. Even that small motion felt like rescue. Back underground, Malik kept walking. He found a small chamber where the walls flowed like a river turned to basalt, smooth, cool to the touch. Embedded in the stone were tools, frozen mid-swing, iron handles that had become part of the rock. He watched for a long time, eyes stinging. The miners were still at work here, he realized, but working a rhythm not meant for living lungs. They scraped and struck and whispered, and when he listened close, he could almost follow the pattern. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, a counting that could be comfort or curse. At the far edge of the chamber, there was a narrow pit. Down in it, something glowed, a soft, pulsing orange like embers under ash. He felt pulled, the way a magnet skews a compass. Each step was measured, each breath a negotiation. He knelt at the lip and peered down. For a moment he thought he saw faces in the light. Not full faces, but impressions. Cheekbones, a jaw, the hollow where eyes might be. They were not human, not entirely. But there was familiarity in the curve of a mouth, a way of tilting that made the chest ache. "Go back," a voice breathed directly into his ear. It was the same chorus as before, but now it used words like a hand, gentle, precise. Malik's hand hovered over the badge in his pocket. He felt the metal's heat even through the fabric. "We need you," the voice said. "Stay and learn. Tell them." He thought of June, of Eli, of Ruth's face when she'd said, "Pray he comes back the same." He thought of his mother's voice on a phone call years ago telling him to be careful. He thought of the way his life had always been held together with small, practical threads: work, pay, a roof. Those threads fluttered now, inconsequential. What he felt was older, deeper, the need to belong, to anchor to something vast and terrible and shared. He stood, hands unsteady, and spoke aloud, feeling foolish. "I don't belong here." The air answered with a soft scrape, like stone shifting in a sigh. The light pulsed warmer. "You do now," it whispered, and the word now sank into him like a stitch. He remembered the badge from the beginning of the story, RMH. He remembered the initials carved into the walls. "Help us, RMH, 1893. He thought of the first man who'd put those initials there and all the men who came after and the way names get reused until they mean something else entirely. Identity, as lore, as debt. He thought of one last human thing. A laugh that breaks the tension. He let out a small, incredulous sound. "You want me to stay?" he said. "You want me to be a ghost?" The chamber hummed, and for once the motion felt less like a command and more like an invitation you could refuse. He looked at the exit direction, where the light had changed before, and tried to picture the faces of June and Eli, the clench in Ruth's jaw. He thought of how human people hold on by touching each other, by small rituals. He could choose to leave, to fight his way back through the maze, to climb, to cough, to push until sunlight burned his eyes and a friend's voice blurted his name. Or he could turn and step into the pit, into the light that promised belonging, purpose, the end of being a single line and the start of being a chorus. There was no sudden shove, no violent hand. The story did not yank him like a puppet. It was patient, persuasive. The light unfurled like a palm, and he closed his fingers around it. Above, the sheriff arrived, slow, methodical, his boots depressing the leaves like small thunder. They set up a light and ropes, people murmuring in circles. Eli showed them the camera, handed it over with shaking fingers. "We lost him," he said. "He went in. We heard nothing." The sheriff listened, a flat line of concentration. "We'll search," he said. "We'll call the company. We'll bring dogs." It sounded official, substantial. They spoke in plans because plans make fear tolerable. At noon, a rope team went in. They moved like men trained to carry one another's weight. Knots checked, harnesses clicked into place. June sat in the truck, hands clasped like prayer beads. Ruth watched from a distance, lip bitten raw. People gathered. Small conversations swelled into a crowd. Wagers about whether he'd return, memories of other disappearances, quiet speculations about whether the mine had any right to be touched again. Hours became claustrophobic. The team came back with faces like carved masks. They carried only a length of rope and a camera that had gone dark. No Malik, no badge, no warm body. They spoke in low tones that don't travel far. The passages changed. It was like walking into a room that rearranged. "We followed the beam, and it led to stone." June folded into herself on the tailgate, a small animal folding into its own warmth. Eli replayed the last footage until the same grainy blur began to look like a memory that could be edited, cleaned, made kinder. By evening, the sheriff made a decision that felt like both mercy and betrayal. They would seal the entrance again. Caution, liability, the long lists of reasons that make official hands move. The gate was closed with chains older than the men who shut it. The seals were stamped. The town breathed out. Ruth stood beside the gate as they closed it, fingertips brushing the rust. "You think he's part of it now?" a teenager whispered behind her. She didn't answer. She only said softly, "Some places take who they need. Some places keep a ledger." Her eyes were on the ground, far away. When the chains were cinched and the last bolt locked, June noticed something swing in the dim light. A small brass tag, newly polished, swung from the chain where a loop had been left. It caught the dying sun and flashed once, bright as an omen. She stepped closer, heart tight. The letters on the tag were unmistakable. She read them aloud, Voice a ragged thread, M. Hargrove. June's knees went soft. She pressed her palm to the cool metal as if the name might whisper back. Eli touched her shoulder, a clumsy human attempt to steady what cannot be steadied. Ruth closed her eyes, and though no one saw the motion, her face loosened like someone releasing a held breath. "He's with them now," she said. Not a statement of cruelty, but a resignation, like someone marking a ledger balanced. The crowd dispersed slowly. The forest swallowed their footsteps, and night stitched itself over the hills. Somewhere inside the sealed earth, the machine sighed and the tags swung, a small chorus of metal against metal. In the diner the next morning, people sipped coffee and told the story again in smaller, kinder ways. Children asked questions, elders offered shorthand morals, and life went on its practical, stubborn path. But at the table near the window, Ruth kept a folded paper with a margin note. "Do not open. It remembers." She ran her finger along the words as if they were a bruise. Eli would keep replaying the footage. June would sometimes wake with the taste of damp earth on her tongue. Ruth would tell a new yarn to the regulars, each version a thread that made the story softer and sharper at once. And somewhere beneath, where the chains bit into iron, a name swung in the dark, catching the light now and again like a wink. The mine had taken another name. The town ticked on. The gate sat closed, but memory is a thing that breathes. It hums in the walls. It drums under boots. It leaves fingerprints on the brave and the foolish alike. And every so often, when the wind is wrong and the sky holds its breath, folks walking the forestry road pause, listening. If you stand there too, quiet as a held secret, you might hear it. The faint tapping of a pick, counting slow and hollow through the earth. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Or maybe just the rhythm of your own heart trying to make sense of a place that refuses to be explained. They found the gate at dusk. They closed it at dusk. Names collect there, like coins in a fountain, and sometimes, quietly, someone drops in one more. If you found this story chilling, don't scroll just yet. Because every week, I uncover real forgotten places and the terrifying legends buried beneath them. Hit follow so you don't miss the next mystery. And tell me in the comments, would you dare step through the miner's gate?